What does 1.3 grams of magic mushrooms actually feel like when you ingest them? Well, we're going to find out right now. I had a listener, subscriber, and friend contact me just the other day, told me he had kind of a very interesting experience after ingesting 1.3 grams of Melmac mushrooms. And we're going to get him on right now. So stand by. I'm Dr. Dave. This is Microdose U, and I really appreciate you being here today.
Enter the world of magic mushrooms with Microdose U.
Hey, Jay, welcome back. Great to have you on the show, and you have a story. Let's hear all about it.
I do. Thanks for having me back. So it's been about 4 months since the last time we talked, I think. And I have been on the hunt always for big experience, smaller dose. And I was surprised by one a couple of days ago. And I thought I need to tell Dr. Dave about this. So I had some Melmax, and I had tried the cold water extraction. I don't know if you've seen that, where you can like basically you soak them. I kind of botched it, and I think I just got a pretty weak dose. So I was like, okay, the Melmax aren't too bad. And I just was talking to some friends, and I was like, oh, some mushrooms sound good. And I just grabbed a couple pieces, a cap and a stem. It was about 1.3 in total. Slapped a little peanut butter on down the hatch. And then I typically kind of forget about it after, right, I take it. And then, right, you feel it come on. So I was just having some leftover Chinese food, watching Netflix, and I don't know if this is familiar to you if you've ever done larger fruit doses. You get kind of a lurch when it hits you. Do you ever feel like I'm like oh, like there it is? Have you ever experienced that? I know some other people have. I got crushed by that as soon as that happened, and I remember because I looked up at the TV, and you know how stuff kind of gets that aura effect. It was like fourfold instantly, and I was like, "Oh, this is bad." They were like arguing about something, and so I immediately turned the TV off, and I was like, "Okay, like what am I going to do here?" So I was kind of like pacing around, panicking. Um, and I remember thinking like, okay, like I was getting a little bit of tunnel vision, and I was like, okay, am I going to pass out? Like, is there something really wrong? Um, and I've had a couple of big doses that were very uncomfortable, and was never anything like this. So I was I think a little bit more scared because of how small the dose was and what was happening. So as I'm kind of I'm stumbling around, pacing around, trying to think like how am I going to calm myself down. I'm texting my buddies who live pretty close. I'm like, hey guys, like kind of freaking out a little bit. I'm like, I could really use a warm body here. Like I'm kind of serious this time, and they didn't get back to me, right? So I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, you're really on your own here. And at this point, uh, I'm seeing, I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like color sheets, I guess. It's not like the rainbows. It was like multiple filters of color. And everything is kind of doing that. You know how AI moves these days when a face moves? Everything was doing that, and I was like, okay, this is like I couldn't really look at anything at that point. I've never had a big visual reaction to the fruits, right, to mushrooms in general. So I thought, oh man, what did I get here? What am I doing? Sorry, I've got some notes. I'll try to stick a little closer to the story.
That's okay. Well,
So
while
I'm
you're, I'll tell you what, Jay. While you're looking at your notes, I've got just a couple comments or questions. So let's split it up for and because I've got a couple things I want to say and ask you first before you move on with your story. So Melmac, is it safe to say that a 1.3 gram that you took is probably it's a pretty strong strain. So would you say it's probably the equivalent of maybe 2 grams of golden teachers? Is that fair?
I, I can't tell you that. I've never had golden teachers. I was blessed with some pretty potent genetics when I first found mushrooms. I don't know if you're familiar with hillbilly pumpkins, hillbilly pumpkin, that strain. So I had, some champion genetics of that. And I lemon tech. I don't like the real long ride. So I usually do 2.5 to 3 grams, lemon tech it right. You're up, you're down, and then you get the introspection. And that was when I had a pretty rough experience. But that was almost 3 grams, right? So I was like, okay, I could see that for me. Sorry,
So,
go ahead.
So let's say, okay, you lemon teched 1.3 grams of Melmac. Let's say to be
Oh no, I didn't even lemon take it.
you did not lemon tech this
No,
one.
that's what I'm saying. I just put some peanut
Misunderstood.
butter on it and ate it.
Oh,
Yeah, that's why I was
okay.
like, what
Gotcha.
is
Misunderstood.
happening?
Okay, so I think it's still safe to say, for those of you that are listening, probably it's the equivalent of about 2 grams of golden teachers, which is not, it's not considered a very high dose, but it's definitely much more than a microdose. But Jay, let's
Oh,
get back.
fair.
Did you have a first of all? Did you have a goal? Like why did you dose this particular evening or whenever it was during the day? What was there a reason you were doing it? What were you trying to accomplish?
There was no goal, and I know the intention setters are probably going to poo-poo me right now, and I did consider that. I thought, I probably need to set an intention next time with these. I kind of like to just right when the mood strikes. I don't know if you remember, I've told you I don't cycle, I don't do any of that. I just if I feel the mood, and I'll be like, hey, I want some fruits, or hey, maybe I just want a cat, and that was what happened. And I was just like, yeah, I want to have a good time. Pop some mushrooms, and then it went bad. It went bad on me.
Okay, so okay, so that's, I mean, that's fair enough. You said you just were home, you wanted to have a good time. Fair enough. When you got into the situation when you were and I know you got much more to the story that I want to hear, but I just want to catch catch up to this point at least. When you were in the situation when you were texting your buddies, you were feeling uncomfortable, you said you needed a warm body, you needed some type of help. Would you say you were functional? Could you do normal activities that somebody asked you to do something? I'm not saying driving, but could you have a regular conversation? Could you sit around and talk to somebody? Did you know what was going on, or was it just taking over and you felt like you were just spiraling out of control?
Absolutely not. I I was considering laying down at one point because I was thinking I'm either going to pass out, but I also was in my head like I need to lay down and just let this like roll through me. I never got that far.
When you
So
say
no, I was not functional. I took a picture of myself. You know those pictures of yourself you want to bury and never see again? It was one of those. So I was like, oh, I was really out there.
but you were functional enough to take a picture of yourself. If you were suffering, and I mean, not suffering is not the right word. Let me
Well,
start that.
this was post.
Oh, this was post. I would say, because if you were going through like an ego death, you would not even be able to take a picture of yourself. You would just
That
be
is not what it was. It was not an ego death.
okay. So okay, great. So explain from this point. Then you try texting your buddies, no response. You lay down. Tell us what happened.
Um, so right, and I'm texting them, I'm pacing around the house and whatnot. And before I got to the point where I was like, oh, I'm just gonna need to lay down. Um, I was just again, I'm trying not to look at anything, right? So I'm just kind of moving through the house, just trying not to focus. I have a lot of patterned tiles and things, right? So all of that, does this kind of stuff. Um, I have a canvas painting that I just got last weekend at an art fair, and I didn't trust myself to look at it, but I was like, I need to look at this because that was really what I bought it for. And as soon as I looked at this thing, it took about 3 or 4 seconds to I started seeing the math. I don't know if you've ever heard that. When people say this stuff in the equations, I started seeing that in this painting. And I was like, okay, I got to go lay down. And at that point, I was like, okay, going into the bedroom, the tunnel vision got real bad. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm going to throw up, like, I'm going to pass out. And so I start to, make it towards the bathroom. And I got hit with this wave of sweats that I've never, ever experienced. Took my shirt off, right? I was toweling myself off, uh, trembling, so cold. I've never felt like a hypothermic cold like this. And the best way I can explain the next thing that happened was in the Matrix. I know I say everybody, most of us are familiar with the Matrix. When they're trying to pull Neo through the mirror and it's coming up his body, I don't, I felt this paralyzing sensation. It was like I couldn't breathe from the cold, and I thought for a second, I thought, oh my god, did I really poison myself? And in that moment, I was kind of like, I might die. And I thought, okay, you've got a decision here. You're either going to just you're going to agree that you're losing your mind, or we're going to agree that this is in our mind. And in that moment, it just got better. Like like the chills went away. I wasn't sweating, and I was like, oh my god. Uh, and if I need to pause for anything else, that was about a 45-minute period. Extremely intense. Never experienced anything like that, specifically off that small of a dose. Um, it- I'm still thinking about it today, and it's rare for me to even think about the experience the day after. Usually I'm just grateful and have the some of the introspection. When I was taking my notes for the show, I got a little panicky. I was like, man, I'm really kind of reliving some of this, and it was wild. It was very strange. So I guess I'm glad for the experience because there is some more after that. It did get better.
I want to hear about that, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to put an image. You were so kind to forward me that artwork. When you were, so I'm going to put it. I'm going to give that. I'm going to show that right now. Anybody that's watching this on YouTube right now can see the artwork I'm putting up right now, just for a few
It's
seconds.
beautiful art.
Really beautiful. So when you were looking at that piece of art while you were in the middle of your trip, what were you like? What was happening? What were you seeing there?
I wish I could tell you. Um, so this photo has the roads, right, that kind of flow through it. I specifically went back to this painting. I saw it 3 times, and then I went back to it and I bought it because the way that painting makes my eye move through it, and how you kind of digest all of the pieces. I got all of that at once. I had the color. Um, it was like I was inside a kaleidoscope with all the lights on when I looked at that. So I can't I couldn't really make sense of it, right? It's like those experiences where like I can't tell you what happened, but I know it. Like I know what I saw and what I felt. I don't know how to articulate it.
At the top of the painting, there's like these. I want to say like almost like ghost-like figures. Were they?
I'm the one that's smiling up there in the middle. That's always me. I'm in the middle of chaos, and I wasn't that night. And but I was like, that's me up there.
I mean, I was going to ask you, were you scared by looking at them? Those figures at the top.
No, I was scared by how fluid and intense everything looked. The body buzz was what got me. I don't enjoy that real high panicky feeling for me from the mushrooms. So that's why I typically stick to the smaller doses that are relatively mild, and this was not. So I guess I'll just stick to real small doses and stick with the micros on the Milmax for now.
If during the height of this trip, if let's say, and I use this as sometimes like a almost like a gauge. I did a video and an episode maybe a year plus ago. I think it was the same, actually the same dose. It was 1.3, not a very large dose, but I also had a much more potent strain. It wasn't quite as intense as yours at all, but I used the guideline. If my neighbor or somebody knocked at my door or rang my doorbell, would I be able to get up and have a conversation with them? I did a test and I would have been able to. Would you have been able to get up from laying down during the height of this trip and actually had a conversation with a neighbor that knocked on your door, possibly?
I want to say I could. I would not be able to hide the way I was feeling. I mean, you could have looked at me and known that something was probably wrong. Um, so in that sense, I say no. If it was a phone call, maybe through the doorbell, maybe.
So go ahead and continue. I think you said you have some more that you wanted to share with about this experience. Go ahead.
I do. So once the cascades finally was starting to subside, one of the things that one of my friends texted me, he said, "Hey man, you ate some. Sometimes they get you." He was like, "It's going to be good, I promise you." He was like, "Try to just like watch something mindless and chill." He's like, "I know it sounds stupid." He was like, "But try like Bob Ross painting." So I was still kind of amped up at that point. So here I'm on Netflix searching for like calm and painting. You can't search by emotion, right? Or verb. Um, well, long story short, it ends up pulling up. I had to write it down. There's a 2022 documentary. It's called "How to Change Your Mind," and I'm sure a lot of the audience, yep, you're nodding your head too. That happened to come up, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to watch this, and I'm going to try to just nod out and go to sleep. So for a couple of hours, I did that. Kind of watched it off and on. When you're kind of maybe a little bit lucid sleeping, and you hear, did a little bit of that. I really feel like I was getting some lessons, but what really hit me was now that I've had some of these experiences that some of the people are describing, in that documentary, I had real deep empathy in the moment when they were describing, like what was happening to them. And I had some really big releases. I mean, I cried as hard as I have probably cried on purpose. I found, if you really just try to cry it out, like when that happens, it's such a good release. And I did that several times. Um, and it's a couple hours, 'cause I think I hit about 3 episodes of that. And then I was like, all right, I could get up. And I just was like, man, that was really wild. Like that I feel this way now. And then I kind of, the loopy deal for a couple hours. But I went over to my neighbors, hung out in the patio, told them, we talked about it. It was great. So it was a really happy ending. I mean, it's a strong term. Anyway,
Well,
I'll leave it there.
nothing wrong with a happy ending, right? Well, you, there was a point where you said just a little while ago that when you decided to believe that it was all in your mind, it just all of a sudden got a lot better. Can you help me through that a little bit? What did you how did you figure that, and how did you decide that?
I, I don't know how to explain it other than I really thought I might have taken, like I said, I really thought I might poison myself. When I couldn't breathe, I was like, I might really be dying. And I'm really here by myself. And I cut this, I didn't think about this earlier. I opened my doors, my front door, my patio doors. I opened them up, right? Because my homies weren't around. And I was like, well, if I pass out or something happens, I was like, somebody needs to take care of the dogs, and they're gonna find me. Uh, so my home is wide open while I'm in here freaking out for like 2 hours. Um, and I lost where I was going with that.
No, I was asking you about you decided finally at some point that this was just in your mind,
Right.
and then you said you from that point on, no more panic, no more sweating, no more stopping breathing, no more hard to breathe.
Yeah. I guess I was just kind of thinking like, am I really going to die? And I don't know how to explain it other than it was kind of like, I felt like my soul was just bared wide open to that question. And it was like, are you really going to die right now? And I guess the easiest way, to articulate it is I kind of had that like, hey, are we going to agree that this is in our head, or are we going to let this take over? I guess is the best way I can explain it. And as soon as I was like, no, we are not going to let this, win, um, it got better. I know I need to go back there though, because I feel like in hindsight, I didn't get the lesson. Like I may have got a lesson, but I was fighting that trip so hard. I think I probably missed out on a lot of good things. So I feel like I need to go back there at some at some point if it
Oh,
feels good.
yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask you next, because as we've all heard, there's really no such thing as like a bad trip, even the ones that are perceived as scary.
Bad experience, I say. It's never a bad lesson.
Exactly. So that's what I was going to ask you. Do you think you learned anything from this? And you said you didn't get as much out of it as you thought you should have. So you say you want to go back and do the same thing? Is it with the same dosage? Is that what you're saying?
I think I need to get to that point of my raw emotions when I can't face anything else. Maybe is excuse me, maybe a better descriptor. Um, I don't know if I'll try. I might try just a half gram of those and see how it compares. And if it's pretty wild, then I'll be like, okay, it is right. It is a strength, and because I know they're pretty far up on the charts, which would be amazing because then I'll just do my microdoses and I'll have really nice experiences. But I'm a firm believer that the universe will keep teaching you a lesson until you get it, and the lessons right just get more brutal each time. So I thought, man, that was probably a really important lesson that I fought and didn't face. So the lesson that I got, I don't think was the one that I was probably intended to get at that time. If that makes any, it probably doesn't make sense, but that's the way I feel about it.
Yeah, but when I asked you originally, like what your actual intent was, you said you were, other than just wanted to, do some mushrooms and chill at home. You didn't have like a goal you wanted to accomplish. But do you think if you did this again next time, you would actually have some type of a goal, some type of an actually intent or purpose?
I mean, maybe. The way I just like I told you, I just kind of do it and then just go with the flow. And this was the first time I was never able to go with the flow. Um, I had, well, we'll leave it. We'll finish it there.
Well, okay. So one more question then, Jay. Did you weigh out your fruit? Did you weigh out?
I actually do because I'm that concerned about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's what I was going to say. If you just eyeballed it and said, well, I think this is about 1.3, we
Mhm.
can make mistakes that way. But if you truly weighed it out, that's so you're sure you had just 1.3. That's a very it's a very intense trip for 1.3 grams. I just want to make sure everybody that's listening or watching understands this. There's never a guarantee. And when you think you're getting into something that might be just a little bit more than a microdose, you need to be ready for something that could be more powerful than a microdose, much more powerful than a microdose. And this wasn't just a little bit more than a microdose or a museum dose. This sounded like it was a full fledged higher dose. That's what it sounds like to me. So you need to be ready for this.
It's definitely the trippiest trip I've had since I found mushrooms. What is it, 9 months from now? So I think 9, 10 months.
That's
It
really
blows
interesting.
my mind. Yeah, it blows my mind.
That's really interesting. And Jay, I really thank you for sharing your story. It's really interesting, and I think listeners and viewers here are gonna really enjoy hearing, because again, there's no guarantee. Every dose, every trip, every situation can be totally different, so you have to be ready for it. Any closing thoughts at all, Jay?
Um, Keep after it. If you're new to the podcast, or even if you're seasoned, find your groove. Dr. Dave gives a whole lot of good advice. There's a lot of people that come on and share their experience. Have your own experience. This is a beautiful, it's a beautiful thing. Even though sometimes it's scary, in the end, it always comes back to love you. Is the way I think about it.
Those are beautiful last words, Jay. I think thanks so much for contacting me since
Thank you, Dave.
the other day when this happened to you, and I'm glad we can get you on really quickly. I'm always like to hear experiences from my listeners and friends and viewers, because everybody's different, every experience is different, and every time we get somebody like you on that can share an experience like this, it really helps. It helps a lot of people. Let's just say that. So, Jay, let's stay in touch. Please contact me again if you have any other interesting experiences you want to share, and we'll see if we can get you back on here, because you've been great, and I really appreciate your time and sharing the story with all of us.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate you again having me. Listeners, have a great day, weekend, evening. We'll talk to y'all soon.
Okay, thanks so much for watching or listening, or however you're getting this information from me. I really appreciate it. Remember, I've got a brand new episode that comes out every single Wednesday, and Wednesday and Friday. And make sure you check the show notes of every episode I do here, whether you're on YouTube or audio, Apple, Spotify, whatever, however you're getting this material. And also check my website, microdoseu.com. Yeah, all kind of really interesting information for you, all kind of links. And also, if you ever want to work one-on-one with us here at Microdose U, the information is right there on the website. Go ahead, take a look. Love to work with you and really help you get to the level where you want to be, and just live the life that you want to be living every single day. You can do this. We're all together. Thanks so much for being with me. Love you. I'll talk to you soon.